to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 82, and this is the Saturday Current Economic Collapse News Brief. And let's get right. I mean, yesterday, wow, what a day. The stock market finished over 200 points. Gold and silver were smacked down. Gold is now under 1,300, just like we said it was going to be. And again, Friday, we ended on a positive note with, I don't know, was unemployment was, I mean, they put a spin on everything, but the unemployment rate ticked up. So I guess, the stock market goes up then because they feel there's more QE and they won't be ending the quantitative easing and the pumping of trillions of dollars, because remember what Ben Bernanke said, or Bernanke, I don't know how, I mean, I hear it so many different ways, his name, but anyhow, that they will stop QE when unemployment hits a certain number. And now the unemployment is going up. So this is the perfect excuse to say, oh, look, we can't stop now. We have to keep doing it. Actually, since unemployment is going up, we're actually going to have to print more money to control what is going on. And you will probably see and hear this, him say this later on, especially when things get out of hand. But let's get into the news right now. China is basically purchasing up many, many businesses in the United States. And, if you really think about it, as they purchase more and more businesses and farms and food producers, because it looks like they're looking at Smithfield Food is the largest pork producer and processor in the world, and it has facilities in 26 U.S. states and employs tens of thousands of Americans. And it looks like, a Chinese company has bought it for $4.7 billion, and that means the Chinese will now be the most important employer in dozens of rural communities all over America. And we see China doing this all over the place. They're purchasing tons of businesses. And actually, if you think about it, and on the people, Infinitum, I think I'm saying your handle right there, the people name that you use, he's saying that this is a great way, and I was thinking about it, it is, if they come into America, China, and they buy and all these businesses, it is a great way of dumping the U.S. dollar back into America and getting rid of it. And if they continually do this, they can unload all of this money. And this is, but they still hold trillions of dollars worth of bonds. So they're going, I mean, if they really wanted to, they could dump that and say we don't want it anymore, and that would create havoc on the entire system. So, we're in quite a conflict with China right now, especially with the cyber attacks, them backing Iran and Syria, teamed up with Russia, and them making deals all over the world with other countries where they're sidestepping the U.S. dollar and trading in their currency. Now, on Steve Quayle's site, the Financial Insider, he came out and he said some alarming things, and I'll read a couple of passages, that he said here. They're going to bring this thing to a halt. They're going to create an economic turmoil and a crash, and then they're going to sell the population on some sort of armed conflagration, some sort of massive global war, which I've been talking about all along. The central bankers, the Fed, the government, see no way out of this collapse, and the only way to cover this entire thing up is to blame it on someone else. It's like a little kid. He did it. That's really what they're doing. But let me go on here. A small-scale controlled regional war is not going to fix the 1.5 quadrillion derivative debt globally. This time, they're going to drag everybody in. This time, they're not going to be anybody who's going to be uninfected. And that's exactly what is going to happen. And we are going to see basically an all-out war to cover this entire thing on. And I just wanted to read one other thing. The Fed over here has ordered and wants everyone to listen because this is insider information. The Fed has ordered the U.S. pension fund to begin to acquire U.S. debt that is coming down the pike. It's going to start happening. The states are going to start carrying it in order to flatten up their books. So we're moving into the last stages before an all-out collapse. Now the Rubicon has been crossed. The armies are surrounding the capital itself. We're at a very critical juncture. And that's what's got me freaked out the most. The Japanese have lost control, and they don't know what to do at this point. They're telling the public, don't worry, everything's okay, but it's not. That is a sign, folks, that they are panicking. That is a sign that everything is not okay, and there is a great fear and trepidation that has begun. So basically, Japan is going to be the trigger. And again, I've said this in many of my episodes. Whenever politicians, government officials tell you it's going to be okay, always think in the opposite terms of what they're talking about. If they're telling you they're doing it for your benefit, it's always the opposite. If they're telling you they're doing this to improve and create jobs or make the economy better, it's always the opposite. They're only doing it for themselves. You have to remember, the Fed is not part of the country. They are a separate corporation. And what do corporations do? They care about making profit, stealing money, making wealth, and that's what they're all about. They have no ties to any government. None of these central banks do. They have no tie to anything. But let's move on here. Now, Russia is conducting tests of a new ICBM designed to defeat U.S. defenses. And basically, they're testing this new ICBM, and it will have a range up to 6,835 miles and 10 multiple independently targetable re-entry vehicles. So they are testing new types of weapons. They've also placed weapons in Armenia to hit Syria if something happens in Syria. The U.S. has already put troops down in Jordan, Patriot missiles. They have fleet that have been parked in that area. They're doing drills with Japan on how to capture an island. So basically what we're seeing here is we're seeing a run-up to war. Now, there was another article that said U.S. is helping spark political unrest. And this article goes on to say that so many devastating changes in the Middle East, so-called Arab Spring aftermath, are being blamed on misguided U.S. policies in many countries. This in-depth report reveals how Washington institutions allegedly groomed destructive elements when attempting to destabilize nations. Their tentacles are now even touching Turkey's full-fledged democracy, one that has achieved economic transformation in only a decade. And, basically this is what happens. Those countries that are not trading in U.S. dollar, that do not have a central bank, the U.S. tries to create some type of uprising that the people are unhappy with the governments in those nations. The CIA, the FBI, the secret ops in the government, working with many different agencies, pay hired mercenaries to go in there and start the revolution. And they do this to overthrow the government so they can place a new central bank into the country and to switch the trading back to the U.S. dollar. That is the only reason we are doing this to all the countries. If you look at Libya, if you look at Lebanon, if you look at Iraq, that is the only reason, is to take those countries that did not have central banks and who are not trading anymore in the U.S. dollar and turn them back to trading in the U.S. dollar. And basically that's all we are doing. Not we, the central banks, having the governments do this. Because for this Ponzi scheme to continually to work, we need fresh new people for them to loan this money out at interest because this whole thing is built up on debt. So we need fresh new people to continually print and get this money out there. If it contracts, that's when the whole thing starts to fall apart, and we're starting to see it fall apart because many countries are starting to drop the U.S. dollar, and it is very, very difficult to wage war on every single country that is dumping the U.S. dollar to trade in a different currency. And basically, what will happen, we will lose this battle, and the United States will no longer be the reserve currency. The United States will end up being a third world nation, while probably the Chinese currency will be the new reserve currency, and it will not be easy for the American people and other countries who have central banks, especially the European nations and other countries. It's also going to be rough for them also. Okay, let's move on here. Obama. Americans should feel comfortable about snooping. Now, this is unbelievable. President Obama, in a strong defense of his efforts to monitor Americans, telephone calls and other communications, argued that additional security certainly is worth the loss of some constitutional privacy rights. And further, he assured the nation that nobody's listening to the content of the people's phone calls. Well, we basically know that's bullshit. And I hate to do this, but I'm gonna. We do not give up our constitutional rights. We are born with these rights. The government does not give us these rights. They cannot be taken away. So we do not trade in any rights for any security. Let's go back in history. Let's go back to our founding fathers, and especially Thomas Jefferson, who stated they must stop trading liberty for security. They must stop thinking the role of the government is to be involved in all aspects of their lives. They must take a good look at what the proper role of government is. They must understand that as government expands, liberty contracts, and we're seeing that now. The government is best which governs least. So basically, we do not give anything up. Our rights cannot be taken away. So what he is saying is a bunch of BS, and whoever listens to him is a fool, because we do not give up anything. They need to stop. And also, what's the use of spying on phone calls if they're not listening in? It makes no sense. Just use common sense for a second. What is the purpose? Now, let's move on here. There was an article that said leaked Obama ordered cyber attack plans and a target list. Security expert. Cyber war with China is the new Cold War. We know what they're doing here. They are setting up this cyber attack that is coming. We're going to hit China. China is going to hit us. And let me tell you, when they hit us, it's going to be a huge hit. And they're setting this up for the perfect storm. I know I continually repeat myself, but those people who are new here and those people who listen to me, as you can see, they are putting all the pieces into place to completely set up the perfect storm of all false flags. This one is going to be a home run. This one is going to do many things for them, and they know it. And that's why they continually say that our power grid, our infrastructure is vulnerable to cyber attacks. The banks are vulnerable to cyber attacks. And they are preparing psychologically the American people and others around the world who are going to receive these cyber attacks. Because it's not only here in America that we see this news coming out. We see it all around in Australia. We see it in Europe. And they are continually doing this because they want everyone to understand and think about who it is when it hits, and they're going to recall in their memory, oh yeah, I saw this on the news. It's China. Oh yeah, I saw they said that this could happen. Just like they scared us into the Cold War with nuclear weapons. They're doing the same thing, but now we're at the end of the entire fiat system and we're nearing the collapse. And this is their only way out if all other things fail to get us into war. And we have to understand this. And again, I will continually repeat myself. If you haven't started preparing, I would start preparing, especially with food, water, medical supplies, weapons, bow and arrows, knives, guns if you have them, or if you can get them. Anything you can to protect your family during this period, because it's when the lights go out, they are not going out just for a day or so. They're going out for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks, however long they see fit to get people angry. And we need to be prepared for this. Listen, everyone, thank you very much for listening today. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.